welcome to episode 6 of Switching Screens with myself and Joshua. How, as always, our guest today is Matt Shantz, who also writes for Raptors Republic like we do. And we're going to be talking about Raptors mostly today. And the Raptors are on a 6-game winning streak. They're mostly healthy for what feels like the first time this season. Things are fun and good. And that's kind of nice after how stressful most of the season has been. How did you guys deal with the Knicks game last night and it being more difficult than it needed to be?
I ate an entire bag of chips in one sitting and had probably been due to too much sodium. So that's how I dealt with it personally. Not a great strategy, but
I mean, I wasn't that concerned about it. I came in late. I came in like at the midway point of the third because I was out, and then I watched the rest this morning. And I mean, it's January. The trade deadline's coming up. Guys want to get to the All-Star break. It's against the Knicks. I had zero concern level. I mean, obviously it's interesting when you get into the fourth quarter and minutes are close and it's still like a 3-point game and stuff. And then Kyle Lowry shows up and does Kyle Lowry thing and you kind of get to the end. Norm was still good, and he still had some big moments in the fourth too. So I don't know. I had zero concern. I even when the game was really close, I had no I didn't think the Knicks could pull it out. I can't imagine the Knicks pulling out close games. I haven't watched much of them this year, to be honest. But have they done that at all?
They've been like a little bit better since changing their coach, but I mean. I pulling up their record here. They've still lost 10 of their last 12 games, so they're still the Knicks.
Yeah, they had a hot spurt right after Mike Miller took over for Fizdale, but after that they've kind of tapered off a little bit. But at least their style and cohesiveness has improved a little bit still. For me, it was that final Knicks push in the fourth. I expected the Raptors to kind of use their 4-minute spurt right at the beginning of the fourth and just kind of not look back. And in regards to, Kyle Lowry showing up and taking over, to me, there's always the Tony Brothers factor. Is that just little bit of insanity and chaos that you can't guarantee how things are going to go for you. And that's for both teams. He's not biased, he's just bashful.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest concern, I think, was that we were going to have to talk about the Raptors losing to the Knicks today.
Yeah.
Because, the Raptors are 31-14. If they had lost, they'd be 30-15. They're really good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just really didn't want to have to talk about a loss. But
no.
Then, I mean, you look at the stretch they have now going into the All-Star break, and it's Spurs, Hawks, Cavs, Pistons, Bulls, 2 games against the Pacers, then Nets, Timberwolves, Nets. They could... I mean, I'll say maybe they split the games against the Pacers, but they could win the rest of those pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they should be favored pretty much through the All-Star break in almost every game. That being said, I assume that there'll be at least 1 or 2 letdowns. I'm very thankful that it didn't come to the Knicks of all teams. But there'll be one game where they just fall a little bit flat, I assume. But we'll see. They're going to be the best team going into every night.
That's why it was such a big deal that they started off the season so well. Because the schedule for them at the beginning was much more difficult than it is in the latter half of the season. So yeah, they should win most of these games. They've been killing sub-500 teams all season. We've watched that happen. Yeah, I mean, it's looking good for them, and I think it's the best part of this is allowing Siakam and the guys who've been out for a little bit to kind of ease their way back into things. Like Siakam, and I know Anthony and I kind of had a little bit of a conversation about this on Twitter the other night, but there's just moments in recent games where he doesn't even look like himself, and not just because Siakam's having an off night. There are things that he's doing that just look like he's not comfortable doing some stuff yet. And I remember him talking about he wanted to come back earlier than he did. And Alex McKechnie was having him go through a lot of stuff to work on explosiveness training still to get back. And, that was something that I think he's still working towards getting fully back as they, continue on throughout the season. So I think it's good for him that the schedule is softer because it'll allow him to kind of ease back into things instead of just like constantly like, well, how come Siakam wasn't good against the Sixers? How come he wasn't good against the Heat or whoever? And, in that process, hey, maybe they'll steal the second seed too.
Yeah, I mean, he's an all-star starter now, and I think it's awesome. There's been so much discussion on Twitter about that, like, whether it should have been him has been a big thing, and I know Raptors fans are right away like, it's great that he got it, he deserves it. I agree with all of that. If you had to pick a Raptor, I might have preferred Kyle Lowry a little bit, but like, I can't be mad that Siakam's the starter. He's such a great story. Last night at the end of the game, he had like a 2-minute spurt where he suddenly looked like himself again.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just, like, for me, that was really good to see, is that he still knows that that's the aggressive player he needs to be. He just can't do it all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. The hope is that he can get back that. And I would agree. If I had to pick somebody for All-Star, I likely would have gone Lowry. Just positionally, I think that there was a space there for him as well. And while Lowry has maintained a high level of consistency, Siakam's initial stealing and burst to begin the season was enough to put him to the top. But if he can get back to that, the Raptors are laughing.
Yeah, I actually, like, I kind of wonder how much him being the guy who got that starting position was about, like, he had a lot of his big moments this season on national TV. That Lakers game, some of the other games where he's had big games have been big national TV games, and that garnered him a lot of attention, whereas Lowry is kind of, first of all, a lot of the stuff he does doesn't show up in the box score, and secondly, he has a lot of big nights on nights where you wouldn't expect a lot of people watching.
Mm-hmm.
And also when the Raptors are at their flattest, it's Lowry raises his profile when the Raptors need it. And so it's often in those nights where the Raptors look the worst that Lowry looks his best. And those two things, I think, cross people up a little bit. Whereas Siakam, if he's rolling and the Raptors are rolling, it's a show and it's entertaining and it's memorable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Siakam's game is a lot more obvious than Kyle's. Kyle's is all the stuff you don't see, and even if you do, you have to be looking for it at times, or if you're watching him consistently. But Siakam is right there and in your face for a lot of different things, like even just the way he does small things that like Kyle does too. But like his closeouts are more impressive, or they look more impressive because he's so long and can like get across the half court in like 2 steps, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, did you see that closeout by Siakam? Meanwhile, Lowry's buzzing around. Doing the same sort of thing, but it doesn't look as impressive. Like I think that factors in. Like the aesthetics matters to people, and I think it's almost a subconscious thing, but it matters maybe more than it should. But that's why teams with Kyle Lowry, I think the more athletic, more in your face player, I think they're always going to get more of the nods from the general public and other players and stuff in terms of like an all-star spot. But it's the exact same reason I think the coaches are 100% going to put in Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, I don't see him not making the all-star game because like coaches have to know how good he is.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done a couple radio spots recently with Fan 590, and I know you're doing some work with Sportsnet right now, Josh. And
yeah.
The one question that seems to come up a lot when I'm doing those is people want to talk about, like, how important is seeding this year? And it seems like it's a real conversation around the Raptors because last year we all kind of felt like it was important, but we had Kawhi, so we had this extra sort of margin of error in the playoffs that was always going to be there. And we don't have that this year. And, like, also, the East is somehow better this year.
Mm-hmm.
And the Raptors are now, after last night, Miami lost to the Clippers, so we're in lose the tiebreaker, but we're in a virtual tie for second in the East. And my answer to that question has pretty consistently been, like, if you can get the second seed, you have to play for it. Because avoiding, like, the Pacers in the first round, or I actually think that being in that 4-5 seed spot is almost a guarantee you're not going to win the chip. Because if you're sitting...
the path through is going to be much tougher from 4-5. Just you're going to have 3 quality opponents instead of 1 subpar in the first round.
Yeah. Like, I mean, right now the 4-5 is Boston-Philly. That's a brutal series for a first-round series.
Oh my god.
And I want nothing more than those 2 to match up and have one fan base just lose their mind being a first-round loss. And that would just be a brutal way to go.
Wait, I'm wrong. Indy's in the 5 seed right now. Philadelphia is the 6 seed at the moment.
Okay. Well, but based on how close seeds 2 through 6 are right now, they could basically be dice in a cup being rolled up, and it could change on any day. And Oladipo coming back and Embiid being out currently. I agree that getting the 2 is of utmost importance if you can go for it, because you're going to get a inferior opponent rather than a top 6 level in the at least to begin your run. And if, let's say, hypothetically, a team like Boston and Philadelphia match up in that first round, at least one really quality team is going home right away. And you don't want to put yourself in that position.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. Toronto does have one of the weakest schedules going forward. I keep... Now, Matt... I'm going to go into this. I'm going to ask you about this first, then we'll go into the other trade deadline stuff. So you have a thing you've been doing on Twitter recently, where you have been posting trades that you find on the internet that are really, really awful.
Yeah.
Offensive, even.
And yeah. Offensive is a good choice of words. Yeah. Yeah, Anthony's been the biggest fan of this bit so far. Just really loving it.
So, the trade that you posted this morning was the Raptors sending Norm, Stanley Johnson, Malcolm Miller, a 2023 first, a 2020 second to the Pelicans, and the Raptors sending Serge Ibaka, a 2021 first, and a 2023 second to the Knicks, and getting back J.J. Redick, Marcus Morris, and Bobby Portis.
Yeah. Anytime you can get Knicks castaways and give up 4 picks to do it, plus talent, you got to do it. That's a given. Woo!
So, why?
Why that trade, or why am I doing this?
Why are you doing this?
Yeah, okay, all right. So first off, because Anthony is painting this in a little bit unflattering of a light, I am not creating these trades. This is not my doing. I am fully innocent. I am sharing somebody else's terrible idea. So I just want to get that out in the open. But 2, haven't you always had like a team where you just hate watch them? There's just, you don't like them. You want them to lose, but you still watch just so you can see that moment. That's what these trades are. I find myself, and this isn't something new, I find myself occasionally just being like, what bad ideas do people have about trades? And I love looking around and finding it's just this pick that gives me pleasure. And so I thought I'd share it with the world as the deadline approaches. And I was getting really, really tired of people recommending somebody like Derrick Rose to come to the Raptors, or who's another one that I can't believe people want to give up assets for. So it's just something I wanted to share with everyone.
So did you select all of the trades ahead of time, or are you picking them?
Oh, no, I'm doing it day by day. And every day so far, I've been picking one that's been created in the last 24 hours. So these are new every day.
Just keeps getting better and better.
Yep. Yeah, it's not, I'm not cherry picking from the last 2 months. It's no. What bad idea is happening right now that I can
so somebody in the last 24 hours suggested that Marcus Morris.
Yeah. I pulled that one up around like 9 a.m. Eastern time this morning, and it had been made within the last like 5 or 6 hours. So somebody at like 3 in the morning was just having a rough night and decided, you know what? Let's do this.
I'm having trouble with the idea that these are real people creating these.
I mean, maybe there's some algorithm out there, but anyways, so that's why I'm doing it, and it's actually a lot of people have made some terrible comments about it, obviously, but I think people are enjoying it overall. It's a fun time.
I look forward to it on a daily basis in a weird way.
Yeah, don't you? Exactly. Now, just think, when this is over, the trade deadline has come and gone, you're going to miss it.
Then you got to start doing free agency ones.
Oh, God.
Oh, yeah, that would involve a little bit more searching, but I'm sure I could find that. Yeah. You know, like somebody suggesting DeAndre Jordan get 4 years and $40+ million. You know, hypothetically.
No NBA team would be that dumb. Come on.
Yep, never.
No.
I want to talk about, like, actual Raptors trade deadline stuff, too. A lot of Raptors fans seem to want a move at this deadline. Like, just looking at my Twitter mentions, the Twitter mentions of other Raptors writers, it seems like there's a lot of fans that really want something to happen. And I kind of find myself under the impression that a lot of it's just wanting a trade to make a trade, because nobody seems really completely sure what this Raptors team would even need in that scenario. And, like, is there something that you guys see as a specific trade target for the Raptors that would improve their ceiling?
Nope. I don't think there is one. Not to improve it so much as to get to where I think they would want to get to. I mean, I think for what I've seen personally, I think a lot of the people that want to trade want it because they believe that the ceiling of this Raptors team, which we arguably haven't seen yet, is a lot higher than some other people would think, including myself. I don't think they have a shot at getting back to the finals with the whatever peak this team is at the moment, or with whatever trade they can get on the open market come the deadline. Not open market, but the market come the deadline. I wrote a big piece on this for Sportsnet a couple of days ago, and I mean, even if you believe the Raptors are that good, it's really tough to find a trade that makes sense where you can feasibly see the ceiling being raised enough that those series are suddenly like the Raptors are in legit contender status. Even the people who are very comfortable with the Raptors and the idea of their ceiling being high, I don't hear many people talk about the Raptors like contenders. I think a lot of people, the expectations were raised because of early on in the season, and that's why this season's been more fun, because it's been unprecedented, just like the last season with DeRozan was as well. That season didn't have the same expectations until the Raptors came in, started winning, and they ended up with the number 1 seed. Everybody was super thrilled, and it's the same sort of thing. I don't see the ceiling being that high. At the same time, they could be a seller, but they don't really have that many reasons to sell either, unless you're looking at Norm's contract for the future. But even there, they don't have to do anything. I don't think people talk about Masai as someone who takes big risks, and I don't think he's really done a lot of moves where he's taking huge risks. I mean, I think he thinks everything through very thoroughly before he makes a move, unless it's something very obvious, like the Kawhi trade that you would jump on immediately. I don't think he's gonna jump on something just to do something. That's not Masai's style, so I don't think that's gonna happen. I honestly think the most likely thing is that they're going to stand pat. And as far as personal, what would you want to happen? I don't even know. I mean, I guess I would be more in the camp of standing pat because from the way I see things, I don't think there's a way to make this team like so much better that you can head into the playoffs and say like, okay, like we have a real shot at actually repeating here and getting back, or at least getting back to the final.
Yeah, I think that the most likely scenario is that they stand pat. I don't see them moving any of their core. So that's their top seven, and even somebody like Terrence Davis, whose future is clearly very, very bright at this point. So if they make a move, it'll be more so in order to reshuffle the end of the bench. So here's your bench piece or here's my bench piece that isn't a great fit for us. Here's yours that maybe is a better fit for us, and see if you can kind of find a give and take situation such as that. But in regards to why there's more of maybe an emphasis this year on the trade deadline, and maybe it's just short-term memory on our part and forgetting what it was like in years past. But every trade that the Raptors have made recently has helped them. They traded for Marc Gasol and they won a championship. They traded for Kawhi Leonard, and that paved the way for all those moves, and they went the finals and winning it all. Masai wins trades, so there's also the perspective and ideology that if a trade is made, the Raptors will be coming out ahead. It's just kind of ingrained in our heads that we can't lose trades at this point. And, historically speaking, that has some truth to it. But what would I do? I'm not convinced that the Raptors are buyers. I'm not convinced that they won't be sellers of sorts. My guess is that the Raptors are going into this deadline very open-minded, with, as Masai said, a hope of returning to the finals, and there's paths that can happen. It's a realistic outcome. But if somebody comes along and, Masai might not want to trade somebody like Ibaka, but if somebody comes along and gives him a no-brainer trade where he gets to walk away with all the assets, it could happen. I don't expect that, but Masai has gotten the reputation over the years as being kind of shrewd and calculating and maybe even a little bit cold-hearted with moving somebody like DeMar in a trade. I think first and foremost what he is an opportunist. If the right move comes along, he's going to jump on it no matter which way it takes him, as long as the end goal of does this take us closer to another banner, which is fun to say, another banner. As long as that is play, I think that we could see him do almost anything.
So I have to ask you, when you say their top seven, is Patrick McCaw first, second, or third?
Depends on who you ask. He's clearly top five. Yeah, I still want good things from Pat McCaw, and every now and again he does something fun. But it's more a weird little niche trait to enjoy than it is somebody to rely on.
I agree with you guys. I think I've heard a lot more from like writers from other teams saying, well, what could this guy on the Raptors provide for me about a couple specific players? There's a lot of interest from people who write about other teams in Ibaka, Gasol, and Lowry. And I don't think the Raptors are moving any of those three guys. Like maybe Ibaka if the right trade scenario showed up. But even that's hard to do because the team obviously isn't completely sold on Chris Boucher as a center yet, and Marc Gasol can only play so many minutes. So if you trade Ibaka and you're still trying to contend, you suddenly have a hole you have to fill. And you're looking for a player like Serge Ibaka to fill that hole. So, and Kyle Lowry, I thought at the beginning of the season it was possible that he got moved because he's very valuable to a contender and maybe the right package came along. But the Raptors have been so good this season, he's such a big part of that. And I think he's more valuable to the Raptors than he is to any team in a trade scenario.
Yeah,
in a trade scenario, I agree.
Go for Josh. Yeah, in a trade scenario, Lowry is the deck chair that's nailed down the hardest, I think. He's the central tenet of the Raptors over the last 7 years. He's the best Raptor of all time, and he helped raise the banner into the Raptors. So it would take I think, Godfather offer, and looking at the market, whether there are teams that should be interested in Lowry, I don't see the pieces or the willingness to move those in order to make it happen, and to make it worth the Raptors taking that step back. And the same with Gasol, even though he doesn't have that history. We've seen what the Raptors this year are like without him, and with him playing, at the start of the season a little bit sluggish. And now with him back, the ball moves differently. They defend differently. They're able to switch. His screen setting just opens up the game differently. And the two big lineup is something that they have really started to experiment with, of him beside Ibaka with Siakam and OG as well. And a lineup like that, the versatility could be really good against a team like Philadelphia, for example, in their side. So there's not really a good way to move those. But let's say Masai right now thinks that there's a 5% chance of getting back to the finals or winning the championship. And somebody comes along and makes him a deal, and his calculations and his kind of outlook say that by making this move with Serge Ibaka or Marc Gasol, in 2 years' time, he can raise their ceiling to a legit top 5 contender. I'm not saying it won't happen. I just think that he's going to listen to offers, and he'll take them more than he makes them.
Yeah, and I mean, when you say in 2 years at a time, I heard from a certain Greek NBA player that Masai has big things in mind.
Yeah, there was a name drop happening out in Paris, so
every time I say stuff like that, I immediately feel a little bit bad for Bucks fans, but it is what
it is.
Yeah.
I mean, Raptors Twitter yesterday was dreaming of Embiid joining us too, and
yeah.
Okay. By Raptors Twitter, you mean Sean Woodley? Just name him. You know where that source came from, and I think that was more in jest than anything. But big dreams.
I mean, the Raptors now, they have a banner, and they have this reputation as a team that, they are a great organization. And even though Kawhi left, he's saying a lot of good things about the Raptors, and guys are hearing that. And that plays into future free agency. And you have to think that even if it's not LA and it's not New York, at some point this stuff is going to get guys in the room at the very least. And that's something the Raptors have never had. Like, we talk about they've never signed a free agency. They've never even gotten a meeting with a big free agent before. We were excited a couple of years ago because LaMarcus Aldridge gave the Raptors a meeting.
Yeah. Dark side.
So,
yeah.
Like, I just think all of this is exciting going forward for the Raptors. And maybe this year isn't the year. I said last week on the show, and this is my stance on this team's ceiling, is I think they can beat any team in the league 4 times in a 7-game series. I don't think they can get to 16 wins. Because I don't think they can do that 2 or 3 times in a row.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty hard.
Odds are very low. In putting it, you definitely put both LA teams ahead of them. You put the odds of the Bucks being ahead of them, likely at least one of Philadelphia, Boston. The layout just kind of seeding goes a long way. So it's unlikely that they get to 16, but could they get to 12?
I think
that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, if the seeding plays out right, then getting back to the finals would be, like, it's not impossible. Milwaukee, just every time I watch them right now, they look so dominant. And I mean, the they aren't getting much media attention, but if you sit down and you watch them play games, that team is just going to be horribly difficult for anybody to beat 4 times out of 7. Giannis has taken significant steps forward from who he was last
year.
Yeah.
Especially shooting wise.
Like, he's taking 5 threes a game this year, and he's hitting 32% of them. I posted that on Twitter earlier today. That's something that he did not have last season, and even the Raptors don't have Kawhi to put on him either. I just don't know. That series seems awfully tough to me.
That's the thing. Like, that series for sure. When I think about it, I still think Philly would be tough too, and I think they're gonna make a trade. But the Bucks, like, when you think about that series, like, just think about the moments where the Raptors have offensive lulls now that they're not going to be able to fix, right? You just can't have too many of those offensive lulls in a series where you're playing against Giannis, a guy like Giannis, who's clearly going to be the best player in the series, and you don't have a guy like Kawhi to just stick on him anymore. Siakam isn't proven as a go-to guy. They can just get you a bucket in those types of series. We watched him struggle a little bit when the best defenders were placed on him last postseason. There's just a lot of questions going into a series like that, and whenever you're the team that has the player that's by far the best, and last season I wouldn't say Kawhi was by far better than Giannis, but he was superior in that series. For those 6 games, he wound up being the best player and came out on top. It's just in the NBA when it gets so tight, you get into those games where the teams know each other so well. That's really when you need one of those guys to overcome that type of difficulty, and the Raptors they don't have that this season unless Siakam all of a sudden goes supernova. But I mean, come on, against a guy like Giannis, I mean, I think we all pretty much are in agreement that Giannis is probably the best player in the NBA now, and that's just really hard.
But just to play devil's advocate on that front, and I would agree with both of you. Watching Milwaukee is fun. They are just a magnificent basketball team on both ends. But who was Milwaukee's second best player in the playoffs last year? Brogdon.
Last year? Yeah, that's Brogdon.
Can they rely on Eric Bledsoe?
I don't know if they can, but then I look at their bench this year, and I look at, Wesley Matthews has been really good for them. Kyle Korver has been really good. George Hill's been fantastic.
Yeah.
They have all these guys that can come in, and they run 12, 13 guys deep this year.
Yeah.
But will they go 12 or 13 deep in the playoffs? So it would be, that versatility is a little bit lessened in regards to who the Raptors have to plan for and scheme. And I think that he is a very good coach.
Yeah.
Coach Bud has not readjusted in the playoffs in his career, at least that we've seen. It's what has gotten us here, we will continue to do it. And so in that 7-game series, if you are able to scheme for the same thing over and over, and Giannis is a cheat code in that he can break your scheme, there's still something to that. Can you find just a little bit of a sliver, a little bit of a gap in the armor, and can you crack it? And so, if I'm putting the odds, I would say Milwaukee has at least a 50% chance of making it to the finals out of the East, at least, and that's probably being pessimistic based on what we've seen. But anything can happen in a 7-game series, and there's a lot of strategy that comes into play of how do these teams match up and how can we strategize against that person. And until Giannis becomes a little bit better from the free throw line, there's also going to be that weakness that you can have some concerns about.
And who knows, maybe Fred VanVleet just won't miss for a series again.
They all just need to touch Fred Jr.'s head before they go out there, as they're going out through the tunnel. Just pat him on the head a little bit. Get some of that magic.
Yeah, everybody gets 2 hours. Everybody has to have 2 hours of daycare with Fred Jr. Just taking care of them. Mm-hmm.
I mean, what you said about coaching, though, it's funny because going into the playoffs last year, I was really critical of Nick Nurse. And, when I go back and I read through the things I said about Nick Nurse, I still don't know if I was that wrong about it. There were reasons for concern based on what we'd seen to that point. And then something kind of just unlocked through the Philly series, the Milwaukee series, and the finals, where he seemed to figure out that I don't even know if he figured out what he needed to do. It was more like he figured out that he knew what he needed to do.
That's the thing.
And, like, this year he just seems to get it. He's realized that he's a championship coach now. He can call a guy out in the media. And he can get away with that because he's got the gravitas to do that. And he's used that as a method of keeping his guys on the right page. He's showing all these other things. That we laugh about the number of technicals he's taken, but you think about that. Every guy on the Raptors roster knows Nick Nurse has their back.
Mm-hmm. And we talk about the impact that it has on players when a large personality leaves the locker room. So some of that conversation has been shaping our OKC Thunder conversations this year of larger than life personalities like Westbrook, who the organization has kind of catered to, is now gone. Well, how does that impact the players? But also, how does that impact the coach? Last year, what was it like for Nurse being a rookie head coach in the NBA, suddenly being thrust into a championship spotlight and having the 1 year to recruit Kawhi to stay in Toronto while trying to win? And so I wonder how much of those concerns that we had were also not to dismiss them as, right or wrong or unnecessary, but is Nurse just a little bit freer, not just because of the championship, but because I don't really have anything to prove to anyone right now. I won a championship. I don't have to convince anyone to stay. We're a stable organization who's well respected. That goes a long way, and now he can kind of dictate his terms as a coach.
Yeah. I think he's a process coach too, which is important. Like, we didn't have any, we had some background of what Nurse liked to do and stuff, right? Because he was on the staff already. But in terms of having the full control of all the decisions, it's just I think a lot of the criticisms were, this is so different and new to Raptors fans, some of the stuff he was doing, and we weren't sure how serious he was about a lot of that stuff and whether some of that stuff was going to matter. If you think about it, the season right before, when Dwayne Casey won Coach of the Year, the Raptors, they were playing their starting lineup and the bench mob, and they were killing everybody. You didn't really see that much else other than those two units, really. And then you have Nurse come in, and obviously things change and personnel changes and all that stuff. But he comes in and he's mixing and matching. He's trying some different things. He has this reputation of an experimental coach, all this different stuff. And if you talk to Nick, he really is the kind of guy who's I haven't really figured out yet entirely, but I'm interested in this, and I'm curious about this. And what if we can get this guy to try that thing? And he'll do it all season long, like we saw last season. And he's trying things like that again this season. Although I do think he does have way more, swagger and stuff with the championship pedigree. But I think what Anthony said is right about in the playoffs where something clicked. I think he seems like a guy who overthinks a little bit and is maybe outthinking himself as he's outthinking his opponent. Because there were some times, even in the Philly series, where I think early on we thought, just there's some obvious things here. Just tether Gasol's minutes to Embiid's. Just do it. It's working. And I think there were things like that where sometimes he would psych himself out and outthink things. And then when he went, he's not going to counter this? There isn't going to be no counter here? Well, okay. Well, then I guess I will just do that. But I thought I would have to be a couple moves ahead. So I think he is a fantastic coach. I just think he sometimes outthinks himself, which is a very interesting thing.
Glad you brought up him being experimental, because I want to bring up one of my favorite things right now, which is that big lineup that we saw for a couple of games while we were getting guys back healthy. We haven't really seen the Raptors go back to it since Fred VanVleet came back in the lineup. But I want more of this lineup, and I love it. And, this is part of the reason I kind of don't want to trade now, is because that big group, Lowry, OG, Siakam, Ibaka, Gasol, they were, first of all, it's really fun basketball. they were just dominating teams. Like, they
Mm-hmm.
played 30 minutes of basketball. They forced 21 opponent turnovers in those 30 minutes of basketball. Like,
Yeah.
you couldn't run an offense against them because your two guard is suddenly dealing with OG Anunoby. And your small forward's got Pascal Siakam on him. How are you making entry passes?
Yeah.
And I just, like, part of me wonders, is it done now? Was it just a thing while Fred VanVleet was getting healthy? Or is this now something that Nurse knows works, but he doesn't feel the need to go back to, and he's saving for later? Because I'm hoping it's the second one, and I'm hoping we get to see more of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would guess that it's the latter, that we will see it in small spurts when he feels the Raptors need a little bit of a boost, or, against a larger team. My guess is perhaps we see it against in those upcoming games against Indiana, if both Turner and Sabonis are starting in the front court, just to have size to match up with those two. But it clearly works. And OG, we saw it a few years ago with him matching up against, his rookie year and how he did against Harden, a classic ball dominant shooting guard, or how he's guarded Beal in the past. In a lot of ways, shooting guard is his best positional spot defensively, because he has the speed to stick with them, the size, and also on offense, the way he can use his strength in driving through the lanes or in allowing little post ups as a cutter where people just can't keep him off of the boards. Having those two bigs of Gasol and Ibaka really unleashes OG in a new way at shooting guard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Even Kyle Lowry, is the smallest guy in that lineup, is so strong. You've just got so much physical strength out there. It reminds me of last year's Raptors in a lot of ways, where last year's Raptors with Kawhi, those lineups, like, we underestimate strength as a physical attribute in the NBA. Because when you have that as an advantage, it's really something you can wield in a lot of different ways against an opposing team. And, like, Zach Lowe wrote about Kyle Lowry's post defense this week.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he's just so strong for a guy his size pays off there. OG does the same thing against opposing wings. It's like, when you have him on James Harden, who normally is the guy who can kind of bulldog his way to the rim, you can't do that with OG. You just can't push him around like that. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry, Josh. Where were you gonna go there?
Oh, I was just gonna say that, I think by now we have a good idea that OG's a better perimeter defender than an interior one. Putting him at the 4 has never been super great. Like, if you're doing small lineups and you're matching up that way, then it's been okay, I guess. But he's always been better on the perimeter with a defensive anchor behind him and just keeping guys out there, the guys that you need to keep out there, like Harden or whoever. He's so great on ball at the point of attack. That's where you'd like to see him ideally. It just, sometimes personnel dictates that you have to move him. But he's always been better along the perimeter. Just, he's got such quick hands and he's so good at laterally moving. I mean, and when you put him in the big lineup, he gets to do that all the time. So you just have him roving around out there. And then, if they get past that, which is so difficult, then you have all these arms flailing around because the lineup's so big. It's just really hard to move the ball and obviously to get inside if your main, ball handler is being guarded by OG. So it's not a surprise that they had so many turnovers.
So, one more thing I wanted to ask you guys about, this Norman Powell season is really a revelation, especially this last stretch of games. I just saw somebody on Twitter, Raps fan 1237 just tweeted, for a guy averaging more than 10 points per game, he's having the best true shooting percentage season in Raptors history right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, when we talk about the trade deadline, Norm's name comes up a lot because next to the top 3 guys, he's the next biggest salary. He goes into that summer of 2021, which affects, how much the Raptors can offer Fred while still keeping a max slot. do you guys like? Is this real? What Norm is doing right now? To what extent can we expect regression? If it's real, doesn't that make him untouchable? And like, how does that play out for it? Because like, I'm having a little bit of trouble with this. It looks so good what he's doing. Aesthetically, he's confident, he's comfortable, he has a great looking jump shot. He's fun to watch right now, but also like, he's 26 and we have four or five other seasons of him watching it as a Raptor where he wasn't this guy. So to what extent is this something you buy into as it'll keep going?
Josh?
I think yeah, so I hear what you're saying. I think I do kind of believe it. I haven't really thought about it too much as in, like, is this going to be a forever thing? But, so I'll tell you what I do believe. Last season, we didn't really talk too much about how good of a shooter he was, especially in catch and shoots. Like, he was already a really great shooter. So the stuff he's doing right now from distance, where he's averaging 40% from three, not really that surprising because he's done it before. So we do at least have some, a large sample size there that he can keep that up. So that part, I think, is real, and it continues to be great. That's something that a lot of teams need, and the Raptors clearly need, shooting. And then I think the real big change for him has been finishing inside. Like, he's always been good enough to get in there. It's just been once he's in there, not having the strength, maybe his decision-making has made him, question about whether he should be kicking it out or putting it up, and then he turns the ball over. He gets himself into the air sometimes and twists in weird ways, and the ball's gone. So he's been able to penetrate. It's been about finishing from that 0 to 3 feet range, and this season, that's where he's improved, vastly, shockingly. It's so high that's where you start to get concerned, is that real? Because he was around, last time I checked, a 70% mark from 0 to 3 feet, which is elite, really great. And
69.4% right now.
Okay, yeah, so it's close to that. So he's been amazing in that range, and it's funny because if you watch him during the games, he's not doing it in the half court still. When there's a lot of traffic, it's still hard for him. He can do it, but it's a lot less. He's doing most of it in transition, and which is great. I mean, that's where he's at his best. I think in terms of attacking, gets a head full of steam, and now he just seems to have a little bit more control over his body when he gets into those scenarios. He knows if he can take a guy when he's out there on the break, if he can split a couple defenders, and once he's in there, he's better at contorting himself to actually get the ball to go in. So I think that's mostly where their improvement's been, because a lot of his points are coming from transition and coming in that space. So I think that's where you have to consider, is that real? Can he continue to do that? He's never been that great at doing it. He's been league average to below league average. So I don't know.
He was really good last year at rolling layups off the front of the rim, it felt like.
Yeah, he always gets so close, and you're so close. You can see it. You can see him being able to get there, but he's just always been a little off. So I don't know. I'd like to be optimistic and think that he can do it, because he has been so close before that you think that maybe he just does need that little tweak, and maybe he's gotten there, and maybe part of it is just confidence, because we've seen he's been insanely confident the last while, but this season really.
I mean, the question is Norm going to remain the most consistent or most efficient scorer in Raptors history? I don't know if I'm fully on that.
Yeah.
That's a ceiling right there. And he's just playing at a level that I don't know if is fully sustainable. But in regards to, you both said it, his shooting mechanics and rhythm, it has looked good the last couple of years. And, this year what's different for me is that he's taking a lot of those shots off of curls or off of movement. So it's not just stationary catch and shoot. It's almost a Redick style, I'm going to catch it on the move to the corner, quickly plant off the hop and let it go. And that's something different. That's new. But it's working. And so there's a confidence maybe there, or maybe there's something mechanical that he kind of tweaked this year. But for me, the big difference, as Josh was mentioning, was the finishing at the rim. And what I've noticed, it's a pace thing. He used to only have one speed. He'd go right at the bucket and he'd be full force. And now he has a little bit of a hesitation step in order to open up that next burst that, because that fantastic first step that he has. Or he gets to the rim and instead of just immediately going up, he knows when to fake, he knows when to pump, he knows how to get people in the air and out of position. He uses his body to actually move people. Taking off from the wrong foot, there's just these little tweaks in regards to how and when he attacks. And so I think all of that is sustainable. Maybe not at 70% or whatever it was. But in regards to how he is making it happen, the proof is in the pudding, I guess. So do I move him? I don't think so. I think that he's played himself into a position of being a 6th man of the year contender and, a legit bargain for the next 2 years, is it? We've got 2 years left?
Yeah. If he opts in.
The player option, yeah. But he's a legit bargain for next year. I think if I'm any other team, if I think that the Raptors are going to be sellers in any way, Norm is one of the pieces that I'm phoning about before Lowry, because that is at least within the realm of possibilities, and salary matching just becomes so much easier to do. So any contender could use him off their bench.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on something Josh said there about, like, he's playing a lot more in transition. This is something that I've thought about a few times this season. Is the last couple seasons between, like, as good as Kawhi and DeMar DeRozan were for the Raptors, having those guys on the team meant that the Raptors always had a guy who preferred to play slow it down offense. Like, both of those guys just really love those possessions where you take 15 seconds off the clock to work into your shot. They don't really have a guy who that's his primary form of offense this year. And I kind of feel like that's let Lowry and Marc Gasol get the other guys running more often. I mean, they aren't playing significantly faster than they were last year. Last year they were 15th in pace. This year they're 13th in pace. They still have a lot of longer possessions. But it does feel like they're running off makes more. And, like, they're getting into that offense faster. And they'll reset if they have to. But if there's something there, Lowry can play for it more because he doesn't have to, pass it back out to a guy who's going to wear down the possession by nature. They will sometimes do that still. I don't love it when they do that, especially, like, that's not really Fred's offense, and he does it sometimes. But I think it's, like, part of me wonders how much that's Lowry's preferred style, despite that he hasn't been doing it over the last couple seasons.
I mean, he's had that's part of the reason, like, we talk about Siakam and how amazing he's become. And I think he owes a lot of that to Kyle Lowry, to expanding his game and how much farther he's got. I mean, just like I remember when Siakam was part of the bench mob, and in the instances where Lowry was playing with the bench, as soon as Kyle would get the rebound or the ball would get in his hands, like, Siakam was gone. Like, he was off and running down the floor because he knew that Kyle was going to find him, that he was going to fire out that outlet pass, because Kyle is always looking to move the ball and have quick possessions. So even though it's kind of misleading looking at Kyle, because he's not the most physically quick guy, and he doesn't look like he's very speedy, but he knows how to get the possessions going and really moving quickly, and he's just so smart at where he's throwing the ball. And it works great for guys like Siakam. And so when you have players like Lowry on the floor who can do that for a guy like Norm, who recognizes, like, okay, these guys are on the floor. If he's grabbing the ball, I'm ready to go. I'm already getting ahead of steam, and as soon as he fires that, I'm going to be ready to score in transition. I think back to where this season's been so difficult to judge, like, statistically because of all the injuries. But I think back to, like, the beginning for the first, like, month and a bit when they had most of the core guys, and they started off the season when everybody was like, fairly healthy at the top, and they were leading the league in transition. Like, once they weren't necessarily getting into transition the most because of the personnel, but when they did get into transition, they were crushing everybody. Like, you had Siakam out on the wing, you'd have Powell out there running, OG was even getting out and running a little bit more. They were just lethal from that. And obviously that's gone down now with all the injuries, so the numbers are skewed. But that's a place where really they can succeed because they have way more difficulty scoring in the half court So they definitely look to do that too. Like they're pushing that idea. Like Kyle wants to do that because he knows that that's just an easier way to get baskets. So yeah.
They're still second in the league in transition frequency, by the way.
Are they? Okay. To what, Milwaukee?
Milwaukee, yeah.
Yeah.
And that initial push, I'd agree that they are making more concerted effort to, off made baskets, off misses. They want to get across half as quick as possible, the majority of the time. It's not just can we score right away, can we do the 7 seconds or less. It's can we get up the court fast enough that right away when you are set up in your half court defense, do we already have cross matches? Can we force you to defend in a way that you do not want to do? And I haven't looked up the numbers, so this might anecdotally or be wrong, but based off of memory and looking back at years past, I would guess that Kyle Lowry on the bench has played at a much faster pace than Kyle Lowry in the starters. When he has those weapons to run up and down the court, and we that in a couple of years ago in the series with Milwaukee when Norm would come in and using him as a weapon. Siakam, as Josh said, his rookie year was basically just a runner. Once we get the ball, you sprint as fast as possible, and using those things to his advantage. So I wonder if Anthony's right. Maybe this is Kyle Lowry's preferred style. But that's one of the cool things that I know that we as Raptors fans, appreciate, and I'm sure people across the NBA do, but just that he is so flexible in regards to how he fits in basketball. You could put him in any style of basketball, any position, any lineup, and he raises their floor and can make them cohesive in a way, and just how he molds the game to what works for his team is just one of the things I think that we still underappreciate.
Yeah, I love the way he always makes his game fit the guys around him. It's incredible to watch. Like, you think back to, you watch old games when he played with DeMar, he made himself an asset to DeMar on offense. He did the same thing with Kawhi last year. Kawhi spoke early in the season about how, when people asked, like, how are you working yourself back into shape after not playing for 18 months? Kawhi would say, well, that's Kyle. And, he has a game that can fit with anybody, but not just that, like, that's who he is as a player, is he makes sure that he puts everybody else in a position to succeed. Last year, his points per game went down, and a lot of people asked if he was declining, but I felt like last season wasn't so much declining, it was he felt like him scoring wasn't the best thing for the team a lot of nights.
Yeah. So he was a distributor like the whole season. Like he was out there like, my not is to run things and make sure things go smoothly, but it's not to score as much. And it didn't help that his shooting was a little bit off too, but like his role like not completely, but changed vastly towards, I'm the assist guy now. Like I'm going to make sure the ball's moving and guys are getting it. Going to make sure everybody's happy because they were constantly talking about chemistry. Like, do the Raptors have chemistry issues? Well, yeah, it's a new team, so yes. But yeah, that drove me nuts. But yeah, he was great at doing all that stuff. So
sorry about the dog there.
Oh, no worries. It wouldn't be one of our shows. It wouldn't be one of our shows without your dog making an appearance.
Scout doesn't bark?
Scout is out for a walk with my wife and a friend right now. They to explore a forest somewhere. But she is very quiet generally.
I feel like I need to bring something up that, like, I don't know if we want to talk about, but it's been talked about on Raptors Twitter in the last couple hours. I want to finish with something a little lighter. So Kawhi got his first career triple-double last night. Which is kind of, like, I'm happy for Kawhi. The fact that he's taken his passing to this level this season is really cool to see because it's something he didn't have last year with the Raptors. He wasn't a guy who created for the guys around him like he does this year. So, good for him. Now, when Clippers media went into the locker room and asked some of his teammates about it being his first career triple-double, Patrick Patterson, a former Raptor, answered with, people in San Antonio and Toronto must not have hit shots. So, I want to ask you guys, how do you feel about Patrick Patterson and people in Toronto missing shots?
Matt, I'm gonna let you go first with this one.
I said pre-broadcast that I can't believe we're talking about Patrick Patterson in 2020. Man, I don't even know where to begin with it. One, it's a bit of a foolish comment in my eyes, even if you remove the Patrick Patterson element of, how his inconsistencies, especially in big moments with the Raptors. There's a lot of playoff games where missed shots by, our bench power forward greatly impacted the outcome. But even just in regards to that type of slander, I guess, or joking, I hope that it was more in jest and not an actual dig. I haven't seen any video, but it just is out of place, in particular from somebody who, when he left the Raptors, could barely find a team to pay him, who struggled in Oklahoma City, who is now on the minimum, I believe, in LA. There's so much about this that just seems like a poor shot. And I felt the same last year when Lou was taking little digs about Kawhi, about Kawhi coming to LA or things like that, or getting out of Toronto. All these guys.
When Dwayne Casey said that fans in Detroit know what it's like to cheer for a championship team.
Yeah. All of these guys on their way out of town wanted to stay and made it openly known that they missed being in Toronto, that they missed being a part of the team, that they were sad to leave, and are trying to rewrite history in regards to who they were on the team, in regards to how thankful they were to suddenly be somewhere else. So I just think it's silly.
Yeah, he's doing the Salt Bay thing. That meme, 100%. Go ahead.
I loved our friend, all of us, Vivek, tweeted out in response to it that Patrick Patterson in a playoff game pump faked nobody at the 3-point line, and then traveled in order to avoid taking an open 3-point shot.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, Patrick Patterson didn't miss that shot. So his point still stands. He didn't miss.
Mm-hmm. I also hope that this comment was in jest, because if it isn't, it also means that he's not paying very close attention to how these offenses are run. Like the Clippers have Kawhi running the point a lot. Like he's doing the pick and roll a lot, like way more than he did in Toronto. And guess what? It's by necessity. It's because of the personnel. They need Kawhi to do that kind of stuff. That's just the kind of team they have. The Raptors had Kyle Lowry. They didn't need Kawhi to be doing that stuff. And if he had been, they would have been worse, and they probably wouldn't have won a title. So, that's just I really do hope it was a joke, because it makes no sense.
Yeah, in a way, it's kind of a dig at himself and his own teammates. A little bit of a drive-by accidentally of, he needs to put up these gaudy numbers here, whereas in Toronto and San Antonio, we won championships. Like, he didn't need triple-doubles in order to be successful, and he still won. Does he need that with you? Do you need him to get a triple-double? Is that what you're saying, Patrick Patterson? Should the power forward maybe get a few rebounds in play? Does he... So it's... Yeah. Kawhi is just an amazing talent, and his passing has largely through his career been the big weakness to his game. We saw improvement in it last year. We're seeing another big step in it this year in his time in LA. He's growing and he's improving and he's downloading new software. And can we just accept that Kawhi, even though he was already top 2 player in the world, is getting better? Like he has another skill that he can learn and develop. It's not an indictment of where he's come from or what he's done in the past.
Yeah, Kawhi wasn't always Magic Johnson, Patrick Patterson.
Yeah. my place on where I sit on Kawhi is that for the rest of his career, he's probably going to be a player, and I think he's here this season, where for 100 games, he's not going to be the best player in the league. But any given game, he can be better than everybody else in the league. And like, even as good as Giannis is this year, I would include him in that.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, even looking at last night's game against Miami, what were they down? Didn't they get outscored like it was like 29-6 or something like that to open the game? It was they were getting their butts kicked, they were getting throttled, and Kawhi literally had to just say, "Okay, I'm going to win this. Like, I'm the best player. Let's get this done." And so there was such failure on the Clippers' part that he had to just go into robot mode and take over.
Yeah. And he's doing that a lot.
In their last 10 games, his minutes are up to almost 35 minutes a game, which has to be a little bit concerning.
I mean, he was talking about it, too, the fact that he's like, we're not good right now, and, like, I'm having to do this, and I'm going to come out and show you by example that this is what we need to be doing, because he's obviously not much of a vocal guy. But he said that, and then came out, and now, like, the last 10 games, like Anthony's saying, like, he's been awesome. But the team needs to come with him.
Yeah, and all this coming on the heels of reports that the Clippers, despite having Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, want more wing depth and are still looking for another big. Well, they have holes and weaknesses, and Kawhi needs to.
And there was a report about them having chemistry issues, and when that report hit, I know hindsight is 20/20, but part of me sat there and said, like, how much of that is the fact that last year in Oklahoma City, Paul George had Russell Westbrook, who's a vocal leader. Last year in Toronto, Kawhi had Kyle Lowry, who's a vocal leader. Neither of them has ever been a vocal leader. And, like, you need a guy who's going to be the dominant personality in the room, and I don't think that's who Kawhi is. And I don't think that's who Paul George is.
And this analogy obviously has holes in it, but I think both Paul George and Kawhi Leonard in OKC and Toronto, they were renting. They were renting and wanted their damage deposit back. And now in LA, they have their home set up. This is where they want to be, and they are exerting their power within the organization in a different way, and are demanding, perhaps this is hypothetical. Maybe they're demanding that this is how things are done. We're not the fun 8th seed, everybody, kind of fight every single night. We're playing for those 16 wins. And that's okay, but it's an adjustment for the other players and an adjustment for the organization and how to deal with that.
And it's a different thing to have expectations in Toronto or Oklahoma City versus having expectations in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. Especially when the Lakers are also good and you are sold as, the crosstown rivals and the battle of LA is going to determine the championship. Like, that's the amount of pressure going on in both teams.
So I'm going to let you guys go. And thank you for coming on today, Matt. And I just want to clarify one thing before we close out and I let you do your shout outs. And I just want to state for the record, I am not and I have never been a Boston Celtics fan.
Right on, Anthony. I appreciate you. Even if I question that as truth, I value you saying that to me and honestly.
Anything you want to shout out, Matt?
Yeah, you can find my writing on Raptors Republic. I try and get a couple of pieces out, a week. Lately, it's mostly been game previews. And you can also find me on Twitter. It's M_Shantz, SHANTZ. Hit me up.
And if you want to find terrible Raptors trades for the next 2 weeks, that's where you got to go.
The one and only.
Josh, as always, shout-outs for you.
Yeah, nothing too much different. I had a piece drop on sportsnet.ca. I think it might have been only yesterday. Time is a weird thing, man. I don't even know what day it is anymore. So that's up. If you want to go read about the some things we know about the Raptors going into the deadline, some of the stuff we talked about here today, that's in the piece. I would appreciate that, of course. I also just want to shout out Matt as well and say that the number one underrated reason to follow him on Twitter is for food takes, because it's like one of my favorite things. It's incredible.
As long as I don't have the Nits reputation, then we're good.
Yeah, definitely.
I know what you're saying about time being weird because I actually did half of my podcast set up yesterday because my week is based on my son's school schedule. So yesterday he didn't have a school day, so I woke up in the morning and I started to go through my normal Saturday routine. And I was like getting ready to send you guys messages for when you were going to be available for the podcast, and then it hit me what day it is. So yeah, time is weird. For myself, I'm at Raptors Republic. I did the quick reaction last night. I have a piece coming out on Monday. I'm doing some more game review stuff this week. This is my Twitch channel, as always, twitch.tv/Barolt. The VOD will be up on YouTube later today, and I'm on Twitter at Anthony SM Doyle, where I'm always getting myself in trouble with some fan base or another.
Very true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, Samson Folk sends me a direct message like once a week where he asks me how it is that I get people who are in basketball media mad at me so regularly, and I honestly can't answer that question. So
You do fine work.
Yeah, that means you're doing it right. Yeah.
Either I'm doing it really right or I'm doing it very wrong.
It's one of the two. There's nothing in the middle, for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you to everybody who tuned in. Thank you to everybody tuning in on YouTube. Appreciate all of you.